And welcome to our next session with Jess Cervellon. Jess, you like how I did that there? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Brian.
Well, thank you for spending your time with us today. Um, we want to just get right to it. First of all, let me introduce you to the audience. I know we know each other quite well, but I don't know if the audience knows you quite well. I think some of them do. But Jess, previously VP of Customer Experience at Feastables. Before that, well, actually, right now too, don't you do a whole bunch of fractional work as well? And you work with D2C brands and CX.
Yeah, so previously, recently, was VP of Customer Experience at Feastables, and simultaneously, because I am a psychopath, I also am a fractional CX and marketing leader for several other CPG D2C brands. I shouldn't say several, there's like five. So I do
That's
various
several.
activities for other people on a freelance perspective.
That's great. I think that the definition of several is probably above five, right around five. So I
Well,
would say that.
the definition of psychopath is above five.
Dude, you're just committed. That's all. Um, okay. And also previously, you were co-hosting your own podcast, right?
I was. I previously co-hosted a podcast called Oopsie Podcast that ended back in September, October,
October. That's what I see
October.
here. I've got my
Thanks.
notes. I've got my notes. Just keeping
Listen,
it. Just keeping
time
it.
flies. Time
Yeah,
flies when you got like
yeah.
50,000 things going on, you know?
Well, and one more thing, and your newsletter, right?
Oh my goodness, how did I not even promote my newsletter?
Come
I
on.
also started a newsletter back in October called Sunday Postcards Notes from an Empath Leader. Um, that one's like honestly a passion project and something very special to me because if you want to learn about being a leader and being an empathetic leader, come see me.
That's it. All right. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of gain more insight from Jess here. But I want to start off specifically talking about your experience at Feastables. And to me, like why I want to talk about it and let the audience like better understand this is just how you have like when you came into Feastables and where it's at now and your journey along the way. So first off, can you tell us a little bit about when you started at Feastables and what you kind of came into and what was that
Yeah.
customer experience department like when you started?
Yeah. So I think I've already said this that I'm a psychopath. So I love a startup. Okay.
Spicy.
Um, it's very spicy startup at that. Okay. And I joined Feastables back in October of 2021. And Feastables wasn't on the market yet. Feastables actually didn't launch until January 29th, 2022. So I started at Feastables with just me, the CEO, COO, and then a supply chain analyst. It was like the four of us, right?
Wow.
And we are just like, hey, so we're going to start this business. What are you going to do? And and it was really important for Feastables. For anybody who doesn't know what Feastables is a snack brand that was started by Mr. Beast, the world's largest YouTube influencer. He's got like 200 million subscribers. Anyway, so back then I was tasked with starting customer experience from the ground up. Literally, it was just me, hadn't hired one soul, hadn't hired a BPO, didn't even have a tool yet, didn't have
Mm.
anything. I literally had to start it from ground zero. And all I knew about our customer base was that we're going to get a lot of tickets and this is going to be a large community to manage.
Why? So hold on, I want to just pin you on that. Why did you know that it was just going to be a lot of tickets? Like, what was the reason behind that?
Because so in my research stages, if I went to like a Mr. Beast channel, like on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter, I could see the amount of followers, and I don't remember the amount of followers then because it definitely was under 200 million then, but it was just a ton of engagement. I knew there was going to be a ton of engagement.
Hmm.
I knew that like the fans loved Mr. Beast and like we were launching this product, the snack product onto the market. And so this was not only going to be a channel for purchasing, but this was going to be a channel for engagement too, just based off of
Now,
my research.
and tell me a little bit about kind of just take a step back. Like, you came to this job knowing that like there was nothing there, and then there was going to be a whole bunch of tickets, whole bunch of engagement on top of that. what inspired you to be like, ooh, like want to take this to
Yeah.
this vision that you have? Like,
Yeah.
why?
So, I mean, honestly, I think it was more of a personal side than just on like the feasible side. Like, I didn't really know what I didn't know then.
Yeah.
So previously, before Feastables, my background is mostly in B2B SaaS types of companies. Like Feastables was actually my fifth startup. So I've worked in like the customer success, product support, aspect, even
Hmm.
product management. And I came to Feastables because I had always wanted to work in ecom and D2C, and I never had an opportunity to do those things. Um, so, and like Feastables was kind of like one of these things that came up for me that I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like this sounds really interesting. But truthfully, I actually joined Feastables because I thought it was really interesting to be in the creator space. But I
Yeah.
also joined Feastables because the CEO and the COO were both I wouldn't say founding employees of RX Bar because I can't really remember that like their journey, but they were like beginning stages of RX Bar before it was acquired by Kellogg. So like I knew that this product was going to be massive based off of the expertise that was coming in, and I also knew that like from an engagement and like just supports perspective that it was going to be really interesting.
Yeah.
So it was more of like a personal thing than it was just like about the product itself.
Yeah.
And people
I
thought I
mean,
was crazy. Like people thought like I was crazy to leave sustainable products, meaning like SaaS and like that world, to go to something that was like brand new. But I'm
yeah.
also a psycho, so there's that.
Well, I think that honestly, like from my perspective, looking at it, the brand kind of matched like your style, right? Like, I mean, you just
Hmm.
talked about being a creator. This brand was a creator. I would define you as a creator as well too. Like, there's a big branding component of this,
Yeah.
which you yourself, big branding component of it. So I think there's a lot of like it totally makes sense to me. So when you first started, and this is where if you can give some advice to the listeners here, like how'd you prioritize? Well, what comes first? Like, did you think about tools? Did you think about the customers coming in? Did you think about the um, just like the brand itself? Like, where did you start
Yeah.
that you can give advice to those listening?
So my two priorities was this, and this is definitely from my like product support background, right? I have a philosophy for anything, whether you're SaaS, whether you're, a travel company, whether you're an ecom brand, that you should be answering questions before they become questions to a customer. And so my first priority was like, how am I going to be able to like proactively support a network of customers as quickly and sustainably as possible. So that included like being able to like understand like what FAQs I needed on this page, understand like abilities for like this audience to
Mm,
communicate, and also having enough staff to for the humanized experience too. And then the second priority, and I would actually say it's like hand in hand. But second priority was brand voice because especially for like Feastables being like a Mr. Beast product, like I want to make sure that like whatever content that we're putting out there, whether it's a question being answered or the people that are like answering it to get behind it, there's like particular brand voice that is being displayed. So like that's like the brand marketer that comes. But those are
okay.
my two priorities, and I think that those are really important for like any type of product or service that you're selling because one, you want to make sure that you're proactively assisting your customers, but two, whatever like company you're putting out there has a personality, right? And you want to be able to exemplify that personality to your customers to then create like loyalty, create community. I can trail
Yeah.
off on this, but that's why those two things are my top priorities.
Okay. So we kind of one step further into the proactive support. You talked about FAQs. That makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, answer the questions beforehand on their website. Anything else that stood out, or anything that you did outside of that, like either on the
Yeah.
website, off the website? Like, what else do you do when you think about proactive
Yeah,
support?
I mean the biggest thing that I've done since day one is I had a chatbot that was like on our website at first it was only on our website, but then as time went on, I also put it on our website and in our SMS channel.
Okay.
The reason that was really important is because again, this is diving into like being proactive for the customer, but by I didn't know how many tickets we were going to have. I just knew we were going to have a lot. So I needed to give an ability for like something on our website for this audience to engage in, to ask questions, to like have like fun in. And a chat bot for me was like the first tool that I installed into like the CX department. And it ended up being like a hit. We can dive further into that, but
Yeah.
like, I mean, when I say thousands of conversations on day one, that's not even a true estimate. Like I'm talking like within the first month that the website launched and this bot
Mm.
was live, it had like almost 100,000 conversations just in like the first 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay. Um, I want to go one question before we go into the chat bot because I think the listeners would really enjoy this. The question I have is about brand. Um, how did you like take the brand itself and infuse that into the proactive support you were talking about? Like, was it conversations with, like, or was it just you looking at the website saying, okay, this is how we talk about this? Like, I will infuse it. Did you do any
Well,
like? Were there any practices, exercises, like
yeah, I mean,
interviews?
no interviews, more of like research.
Okay.
So definitely like if I'm selling a product, like I want to make sure that like I'm giving product information as much as possible. So like here's for these ingredients, these are why we chose these ingredients. Oh, you have an allergy, like this is, you should be aware of these things, right? Like so I built all of those things in FAQs and then like pathways in the bot.
Okay.
But I also knew from like researching just like the audience that Mr. Beast had that they like to joke, they like to like have back and forth like banter, right?
Hmm.
So I also included like fun pathways in like chatbots, also like fun like FAQs about like why we started the brand, what the brand is about, things that just kind of like grew the personality. And then I also invested, but this is because I'm at the heart of everything. I went to art school, so like I am like I think very creatively. I also invested in hiring a temporary copywriter to help us develop out that voice too.
Okay.
Um, and she helped develop out the voice in not just on like stuff like on the website, but also in this chatbot that we're talking about, macros, like all of these things to make sure that like, she set out like the first initial piece of it and then we've like built on it from there. And then I also invested in design too. I think like when I think of customer experience, like I don't think about it like just like, okay, all right, I'm answering the questions, but how do you like psychologically like make a customer look at information and absorb the information correctly? And that's kind of like the art of copywriting,
Yeah.
to be honest
Yeah.
with you. um
That's great.
yeah.
Okay. No, that's really interesting because I honestly thought it was like, okay, I'm just gonna interview like people that already worked at Feastables, but you're kind of almost saying it's also the other way, which is like mirroring the customers of like what the
Yeah.
customers expect. How do they talk
Yeah.
as
Well,
part of
we
it too?
didn't, I mean, when we launched, like we didn't have a customer. We only
Right.
customers we had were like the four of us. And then like by the time we launched, I think we were
Right.
like eight people. So it's like we only knew what we knew within this like
Yeah.
insulary environment. You know what I mean? Like as a customer experience individual, like I have to go out and like look at a customer's experience for like the Mr. Beast brand as a whole.
Right, right. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, so let's dive into the chatbot because I think that's like such an interesting experience, like a lot of work that you've done on this side. So walk me through this. So you say like, okay, we got to get the chatbot on the site because there's just so many conversations that are coming. Um, how much research did you do, like workflows, like building the actual bot? Like, how many hours did that take before you actually put it live? Or was it reverse where you put it live and then you learned what to tweak and what to edit?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of both because like I said, like we didn't know what we didn't know, right? So it's like, okay, I walked into it with like, all right, let me answer questions before they become questions. So it's like your basic product information.
Hmm.
Um, and and sorry, just to back up, I had a full 30 days before we launched.
Okay.
Um, and the internal team as well as like the tool that I used, like that team like really helped us like get everything situated. So We did, so of course, like the FAQs that we had built, the product information, like taking all of those things. I also installed, from like a product information perspective, I installed the chatbot on our product display pages, PDPs. Because like if you're a customer and you're coming to the page and you're sitting at that page for like maybe 1 to 2 minutes, like maybe you need a little bit of a nudge to like make your purchase. Maybe you need a little bit of
Mm,
conversation to like convince you to make a purchase, right? So that was like always a strategy in the beginning of like, okay, answering the questions before they became questions. And then as for like workflows, then I built out like this randomness pathway, which was like, because the whole brand ethos in the beginning was about like randomness and fun and like really just kind of like
mm,
living out that like Mr. Beast audience, right? And so
yeah,
I knew that like I had to like install like that randomness and fun into this like boring, usual boring chatbot, right? So we built out like a whole randomness pathway. There was like jokes, there was like games, there was like a rock paper scissors game, but like text based. There was like some GIF exchanges, memes, like really like fun stuff, right? And like built out like, and when we talk about workflows, like they're literally trees. So if you select
yeah,
A, you go to maybe C, right? Or if you select B, maybe you're going to D. Like I like had to build out like these like pathways, which sounds like, when as I'm talking about it, probably sound to the audience might sound a little bit daunting, but it's actually not. It's just you have to like think about like strategy from a strategic map, right? And then the other thing that we also added, which brought in a lot of revenue. So I talked about like the like putting this bot onto the PDP pages to like convince somebody to purchase, right? So in the first launch, the couple of months that we had launched with this, that chatbot actually, I can't say the exact amount, but just put it this way, like gave us like at least six figures
mm,
in revenue, which is significant, right? For like something that's just like kind of an always on
yeah,
assistance, right? And then, so then to backtrack to like what you originally asked me, so that was like the initial onset like strategy of like utilizing this bot. But then every single day or every single week, like whatever we had time for, we were looking into reporting, we were looking into like failed paths or questions that weren't being answered and building new pathways on it. So like no matter what tool you're utilizing, you always have to feedback loop information to continue like building upon your tool set. And that applies for like chatbots, that applies for like a phone service, a ticketing
yeah,
tool, whatever it is. You're constantly having to look like at the feedback that you're getting so you can constantly improve. There's no way around it. Like you can't just be like set it and forget it and call it a day.
yeah. So it when I'm listening to you, it's like there's a fine line, I think, between like this. Let's just talk about the bot being almost an entertainment center, where it entertains the visitor on the web page, as well as answering questions, and just getting to the response as fast as possible for the consumer. So
Mm-hmm.
my question to you is like, for those that are listening right now, how can one figure out if they should also start building a chat bot that is either more entertainment or more, hey, it's just more about answering someone's question? Or is it always about both right now?
I think that I went into it thinking it was about answering somebody's question and came out of it realizing it was entertainment.
Hmm.
And doubling down on the entertainment. And I think that that's where like I've developed my philosophy about like AI and chatbots is like it doesn't always have to be about like this informative thing. Like yes, make it informative, make it fun, but also give it a little bit of a like a personality and like make it kind of an extension of your team.
Yeah.
Like there's always going to be somebody on the other end of it that's like for the humanized experience, right? But like if this audience in particular for
Yeah.
Feastables comes to the table and they're looking for engagement and like just entertainment, I want to entertain those people like through this like AI, through this bot, because I want to make sure that like the humanized experience like means that the agents are a little bit protected to be able to actually do the work that they need to do, which is about like supporting retention, loyalty building, right? And being able
Yeah.
to have those conversations. So again, I think it's a two-parter. I think it's like informative and I think it's also entertainment. And I
Hmm.
think that like, and if I look at the like landscape of like not just ecom, I would even say like SaaS, I would say like any sort of support, right? Why do you have to be boring? Why can't you make it fun? make it fun, because if you're building fun out of these like tools that you're like this always on assistance, people are going to be more likely to utilize them. Like the take rate of like help centers and chatbots and all of these things, all are dependent on like consumer behavior. I wouldn't say consumer behavior, sorry, I would actually say like psychological behavior of like a person, right? Like some
Yep.
people don't necessarily like to utilize help centers, some people don't necessarily like to use chatbots, but if you're developing out some sort of personality with these tools, people are going to be more likely to have a take rate on them.
I gotcha. So you just talked about AI. Can you talk to us a little bit about like how you infused AI into your chatbots? Was that
Yeah.
kind of a necessary process, or was it something that just organically kind of like happened in your case?
It was actually more organic. So in the beginning, we didn't like, so back then we didn't actually have like chat GPT. Like there wasn't this whole like, like, I wouldn't say resurgence, but there wasn't this whole thing about, chat GPT then. It only happened like in 2022 for us,
Right.
right? So, we went through, we were like building these pathways for very like intent based perspectives, right? Like you do X, you'll get to Y, right? And then as chat GPT started to develop, then we started utilizing AI into it. But really where we're utilizing AI was, as we expanded the company into like going international and going to these other markets, like you want to give some sort of localized experience, but in order to like keep up with that demand and keep up with the same philosophy of like,
Mm.
being informative and giving entertainment for this always on experience, I would have to hire like multiple agents in multiple places, right? So AI actually organically, became used within this chatbot for, language and localized experiences, and like kind of, you
Yeah.
know if you're saying hello, it's hola, right? Like, you
Right.
know what I mean, like, and utilizing it in like those perspectives. And then where we've also, this isn't in chatbot, but where we've also used AI is, um, in agent responses. So not all the time, but like to really like assist the agent to be like, I don't want to say
Internally.
internally, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to say like to be quicker necessarily, but to be like, when you're constantly sitting there and you're like you're spitting out tickets, right? It's like hard to kind of like be entertaining. It's hard to kind of like, be fun all the time. So like we've utilized AI to like kind of change up the pace of like a normal macro and making the
Yeah.
message a little bit like different and a little bit more personalized.
Yeah. Well, I assume what was really important, when you talked about like the localization and it really expanding, was that you knew your brand, like you had a strategy already for CX. Like the chatbot was like kind of complete for, let's just say, the English language. And then since that was all well known, it seemed to me that it was a lot easier than to expand out with the AI
Hmm.
capabilities.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't, and then you're kind of like building, or expanding not on really like a foundational layer. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
I mean, yeah, basically it's like it gave us the ability to like scale the tools rather than having to like go out, like build another strategic map and like do this, do that, like make sure like the language is all correct. Like it just gave us that ability to like scale quicker
Yeah.
into
Did
international
you
markets.
did you already have like were sales coming in internationally, and then you were like, oh, we have to provide the C experience on top of it, or was it the opposite where you weren't? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's proactive. Like,
Uh,
because I started the whole conversation with like answer a customer's question before it becomes a question, right? So like when we
yeah,
knew that we were like going international, right? Like we knew that there might be a need for French, there might be a need for, we're available in Iceland. So like I think that's Norwegian. This is gonna be terrible, but you know what I mean. Icelandic, Jesus Christ.
there you go.
But you know what I mean. Like, and that's just there's different language barriers, and so like I come from the philosophy of thinking like answer questions before they become questions, which also means develop a localized experience before like you get there. Like from the on-site, on set, you should be giving out like an
Mm.
experience that like as to what you can control.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about like the result of that so far? Like, have international sales, the CX experience outside of America been like, has there been work still to do on that front, or has
I
AI
think there's
really
definitely
contributed?
there AI for sure has contributed into like developing that localized experience. Like there's no question of that. I think and what's interesting too is like I wouldn't say we see the same amount of engagement that we did when we like launched in the US, but I would say that there's engagement, there's still high engagement rates.
Yeah.
I think it just like allowed us to scale a little faster.
Yeah.
I wouldn't contribute anything to like revenue or any of those perspectives.
No, but I would say, at least, like, again, to share this with the audience, like, I find that fascinating, and we've had a lot of discussion so far in this summit, and I, as far as I know, no one has really talked about the AI use, like, to expand into other markets, and I honestly think that's a great way to utilize AI right now, because especially though, if you have a CX strategy already in place, your brand already in place, and then it's just expanding it as opposed to creating brand new.
Yeah.
Um,
I think there's a lot of like use cases for AI. I think also like the one thing to keep in mind is that AI is not going to come and take a job. Like what it is going to help like scale faster and make things like easier.
yeah, that's great. Well, you know what? Let's end it there. I think that's the perfect quote. I'm going to pull that out and place it everywhere. But Jess, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Good luck into your future, wherever that may be, and we'll talk later.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.
Bye.